Dear brothers and sisters, we read just the whole Passion of our Lord, and I would like just to say a few words about several of the sentences that we just read in the Gospel that help me, and maybe they can also help you in this meditation of the Passion of the Lord. And one thing is the question that Pontius Pilate puts to Jesus: "Are you the King of the Jews?" And Jesus says, "Yes, you say so." We know that in many countries and in many circumstances, also in the past, and that was the case of the Romans, they thought that religion was something typical of each nation, and each nation has its God. And the least of those for the Romans was just the little place called Israel. And now they had someone who said to be a king and is going to be condemned to death. And regarding this question, I think just imagine if it was put to ourselves: who is Jesus for me? Could I say that Jesus is king of my life, that he is the center of my life? And I think we would all like to say yes, but it's not so easy to really be consequent with this answer. Pilate says also, "Which of the two prisoners do you want me to release to you, Barabbas or Jesus called the Christ?" When you read this in the passage of the Gospel, it's a bit blunt. How can you choose a person like Barabbas instead of Jesus? And but if we look at it a bit more personally from our point of view, and don't you think it happens to us many times that we have the choice to just for Jesus or my own desires, my own laziness, my own whims or whatever it is. And at times we choose that instead of Jesus and things that we know that Jesus would ask of us. In that way, we're not so far away from the people who cried out, "Barabbas." And Pilate says to them, "Then what shall I do with Jesus called Christ?" They all said, "Let him be crucified." "What evil has he done?" And they only shouted the louder, "Let him be crucified." And they say something that I think I got a bit afraid when I read this. You read it literally like they say, "His blood be upon us and upon our children." Not only they say that we don't care what happens to Jesus, but we take responsibility for him being put to death. Jesus, thank God, does it otherwise. He gives his blood for us to redeem us from sin. And then he was indeed scourged and handed over to be crucified. They spat upon him and took the reed and kept striking him on the head. And when they had mocked him, they stripped him of the cloak, dressed him in his own clothes, and led him off to crucify him. If you see what happens to Jesus, one of the things that we realize that sin has to be something serious. Otherwise, God the Father would never have done this to his own Son. But so much has God loved the world that he sends his Son to die for us on the cross. This feast of today has like a double side. There's the procession of Jesus coming like a king into Jerusalem. We celebrated with the children in the church at the beginning with the blessing of the palms. And then the Passion, how our Lord dies for us. And this is Jesus, the King of the Jews. Many times you see in the crucifix those words. There's only the initials, INRI, Jesus Nazarenus Rex Judeorum. And it was put in 3 languages, in Latin, in Greek, and in Hebrew. And Jesus is really the Son of God. He's really king, but his kingdom is not of this world. Not only the people or the soldiers, but the chief priests and the scribes and the elders mocked him and said, "He saved others, he cannot save himself. Let him come down from the cross now, and we will believe in him. It's not only the people of those times who were there at the cross, because we were all present in some way, because God is out of time, and what Jesus did at this time, he keeps on doing. It has an eternal value, that's sacrifice of our Lord on the cross. And don't you think that, let's say, the so-called modern man, or the man who calls himself modern, who doesn't believe in God, at times would say what these people say. You saved others. You did things that we didn't quite understand. You saved, even bring people back from the dead to life, and give the sight to a blind man. This paralytic was able to walk again. And you did things good for others, and you cannot save yourself. Come down from the cross. And the enemies of Jesus recognized now that Jesus had done a lot of good things. And another kind of people here is what you could say the sensationalists. Come down from the cross and we believe in you. Do you think that someone who doesn't believe was present when Lazarus came out of the tomb, and they decided to kill Jesus because of that? Because many people began to believe in him. Of course they would not believe in Jesus if he would come down from the cross. And Jesus teaches us that his will is different. He does what his Father wants him to do. To deliver us from our own misery, the Lord decided just to suffer. You have the reaction of people who didn't know anything about faith. You could say the Roman soldiers who were there. And their reaction is, let's say, quite more open-minded than the rest. The centurion and the men with him who were keeping watch feared greatly when they saw what happened. The earthquake and the eclipse that happened. Everything got dark and like a storm out of nothing. And they linked it immediately with the death of that man who was there. And we don't know exactly what they meant by this, but they said, truly, this was the Son of God. This is a special person. And maybe the Lord granted them at that moment the gift of faith. I would like to recommend you, for the coming days, if you have the opportunity at home, to read Psalm 22. When Jesus, we read a bit in the Mass, there's, my God, why have you abandoned me? And but just that's the key point of the whole verse. It's the beginning. But and the first part is the passion, and the second, the last part, is the glory of Christ. And I would like to end with this, as today you see the cross and the glory of the Lord, and also in our life as suffering and joy go hand in hand. All the ends of the earth will remember and turn to the Lord. All the families of nations will bow low before him, for kingship belongs to the Lord, the ruler of all the nations.